The night air was colder than I remembered, sharp enough to sting my skin as I stood there, frozen, staring at the door in front of me. The same door I had unlocked 1,000 times before. The same door I had paid for. And now, it was locked. I tightened my grip around the small bag hanging from my shoulder. It was all I had managed to grab in those few stunned minutes. A change of clothes. My phone. My charger. Proof of a life reduced to essentials. The porch light flickered weakly above me, buzzing like it was unsure whether it should stay on or give up completely. Inside, I could hear faint sounds, footsteps, the clink of a glass, the low murmur of a television. Life was continuing on the other side of the door. Just, without me. I raised my hand slowly and knocked. Once. Twice. Nothing. My breath came out shaky as I whispered, more to myself than anyone else, "This is my house." The words felt strange in my mouth, like they no longer belonged to me. The street was quiet, the kind of silence you only hear late at night in the city when even the traffic has grown tired. A stray cat darted past the gate. Somewhere far away, a motorcycle roared and disappeared. The world didn't stop for heartbreak, it never does. I stepped back and looked up at the house. Every window glowed warm yellow. I remembered choosing those lights, arguing over paint colors, signing papers with hands that trembled from excitement and fear. I remembered thinking, this is it. This is home. And now I was standing outside like a stranger. My phone buzzed in my hand. For half a second, hope sparked in my chest. Maybe they'd changed their mind. Maybe someone inside had realized how wrong this was. But it wasn't a message from them. I swallowed hard, my throat burning. My chest felt tight, heavy, like something was pressing down on it. I wanted to scream. To bang on the door. To demand answers. Instead, I turned away. Each step down the porch felt heavier than the last. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know where I'd sleep. All I knew was that something had broken tonight, something that could never be fixed. As I walked into the dark street, one thought kept repeating in my mind, sharp and relentless. How did it come to this? And just like that, the memories came rushing back, voices raised, words cutting deep, and the moment she looked at me and said the sentence that changed everything. If you want to see what happens next, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. The memory hit me like a cold gust of wind, sharp, unrelenting, impossible to ignore. One moment, I was standing in the living room of the house I had built with my own hands. The next, I was facing her, my stepmother, her eyes icy, her words sharper than any blade I had ever known. "This is not your house," she said, her tone calm but cutting, like she had practiced it 1,000 times. She stood near the grand staircase, arms crossed, heels clicking lightly against the polished wood floor. "You don't belong here. Pack your things. Leave. Now." I froze, clutching the papers I had brought to prove what was mine, documents, receipts, statements, all meaningless in the face of the cold certainty in her voice. "But, this is my home," I whispered, disbelief twisting in my chest. "I've been paying for this place. I live here." She laughed softly, a hollow, chilling sound that echoed through the high ceilings. "Live here? You? Don't make me laugh. This house has always been mine. Your father may have given you money, but it doesn't give you the right. You are nothing but a guest, and guests leave when asked." My father sat in the corner of the room, a silent observer. His hands rested on his lap, motionless. He said nothing. His eyes avoided mine, and in that moment, I realized the betrayal was not just hers, it was ours together. But mostly hers. The walls around us, which I had decorated with care, seemed to close in, reflecting back my humiliation. The intricate chandelier above swayed faintly, catching the light and scattering it across the expensive rugs and polished floors. Everything I had worked for, everything I had dreamed of, suddenly felt foreign. I tried again, voice shaking now, "You can't do this." You don't get to argue, she interrupted, stepping closer. Her presence filled the room, suffocating me with authority I had never been prepared for. I decide who stays here. And you leave. A part of me wanted to yell, to fight, to prove her wrong. But the other part, the quiet, simmering part that had learned patience from years of being underestimated, took over. I backed away slowly, gripping my bag. Every step felt heavy, each one a surrender I refused to let show as fear. I turned toward the door, and in that final moment, I saw her smirk, a small, cruel curve of the lips that promised she thought she had won. And yet, as I stepped into the hallway, I didn't feel defeated. Something deep inside whispered, "This isn't over." Not yet. That whisper followed me down the stairs and out the front door, carrying me into the night that would become the hardest walk of my life, and the beginning of her downfall. Even as I walked away that night, the memories of how this house came to be haunted me. I could see it all in my mind's eye, the foundation poured with trembling hands, the long nights balancing accounts, and the endless phone calls with contractors, banks, and electricians. Every brick, every tile, every carefully chosen fixture carried a piece of me. I remembered the first day I had set foot on the empty plot of land in the city's outskirts. The air smelled of damp soil and fresh cement, with the faint hum of motorcycles and distant chatter from the marketplace nearby. I had envisioned a home filled with light, warmth, and a sense of belonging, a place where laughter would echo through the halls. It hadn't been easy. The mortgage payments alone had taken months of sacrifices. I had skipped dinners, let go of small pleasures, and worked overtime just to make sure every installment was paid on time. Bills piled up, paperwork stacked on my desk like towers of stress. Yet I had endured it all, thinking of the day I would finally turn the key and call this house mine, and yet, here I was, locked out, while she, my stepmother, walked through those same halls as if she had built them herself. She had taken every chance to claim credit for my efforts. "We worked hard for this," she would say to guests, conveniently omitting who had actually signed the checks, who had argued with the bank, who had stayed up at night negotiating contracts. I could still hear her voice in my mind, smooth and confident, as she described the house to neighbors with pride. "It's all ours," she would say, "we designed every corner." And I would nod quietly, swallowing my frustration, knowing the truth. I had built this house, brick by brick, bill by bill, while she enjoyed the spotlight. The betrayal cut deeper than the cold air that night. It wasn't just about the walls, or the furniture, or the money. It was the disrespect, the dismissal of years of work, sweat, and dreams. The unfairness of being erased from the story of my own life. I stepped onto the sidewalk outside, feeling the weight of my sacrifices settle in my chest. Every streetlight, every faint sound of the city around me, the honk of a car, the bark of a distant dog, the hum of a tuk-tuk, reminded me that life kept moving, even when justice had yet to catch up. And in that stillness, I realized something. Ownership isn't just about walls or titles, it's about control. And one day, I would remind her exactly who truly owned this house. I stood there for a long moment, my hand resting on the strap of my bag, feeling the weight of everything I wasn't saying. The documents were still in my pocket, proofs, receipts, contracts that could have ended the argument in seconds. All I had to do was pull them out. One sentence. One paper. One confrontation. But I didn't. I looked around the living room one last time. The lights were too bright, almost harsh, reflecting off the polished floor. The air felt heavy, thick with unspoken words. Somewhere in the kitchen, a clock ticked loudly, each second stretching longer than the last. No one stopped me. No one asked me to stay. So I turned toward the door. My footsteps were slow and steady as I crossed the room. With every step, memories followed me, the laughter that once filled these walls, the evenings spent planning, the quiet pride I felt knowing I had built something real. I expected anger to rise in my chest, expected my hands to shake. But instead, there was a strange calm, deep and controlled, like the quiet before a storm breaks. At the door, I paused. My fingers hovered over the handle. For a brief moment, I wondered if my father would finally speak. If he would clear his throat, call my name, tell her to stop. He didn't. The door opened with a soft creak, and cool night air rushed in, brushing against my face. I stepped outside, pulling the door shut behind me, not slamming it, not rushing. Just closing it gently, as if I were the one leaving with dignity. The street was dimly lit, lined with quiet houses and sleeping trees. A street vendor down the road was packing up, metal shutters clanging softly. Somewhere, a dog barked, then went silent. Life carried on, unaware of what had just happened inside that house. As I walked away, I could feel her eyes on my back. I imagined her smirk, her certainty that she had won. She probably thought my silence meant defeat. That I was weak. That I had nothing left. She was wrong. Silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes, it's strategy. With every step, my thoughts grew clearer. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to prove anything in that moment. The truth didn't need my voice, it had its own way of speaking. And when it did, it would be louder than any argument I could have started that night. I adjusted the strap of my bag and walked on, disappearing into the shadows of the street. Behind me, the house stood tall and confident, unaware that its walls were built on a mistake. Morning arrived quietly, slipping into the house through half-drawn curtains like it always did. Sunlight pooled across the living room floor, warm and golden, touching the same furniture she had walked past with pride the night before. My stepmother stretched in her bed, a small smile already forming on her lips. The house felt peaceful, her house, as she believed. She got up slowly, wrapped her shawl around her shoulders, and walked toward the kitchen. The tiles were cool under her feet. From the window, she could see the narrow street outside, already awake with life, shopkeepers lifting shutters, a vegetable seller calling out prices, children in uniforms hurrying past with school bags bouncing against their backs. She poured herself a cup of tea, humming softly. Finally, she muttered, taking a sip. Some peace. She reached for the light switch. Click, nothing happened. Her smile faltered. She clicked it again, harder this time, as if force might fix it. Still nothing. She frowned, glancing toward the fan above her head. It had stopped spinning sometime during the night. Strange, she murmured. She walked to the living room and pressed another switch. Darkness. No hum of electricity. No reassuring buzz of appliances. The house felt suddenly too quiet, unnaturally still. Annoyance crept into her expression. These power cuts, she said aloud, rolling her eyes. Always at the worst time. She reached for her phone on the table and dialed the electricity office. The line rang, and rang. Then a recorded voice answered, asking her to check account details before proceeding. She frowned again, tapping her nails against the table impatiently. While waiting, she tried turning on the television. It remained black and silent, reflecting her growing irritation. The calm confidence she had woken up with began to crack, just slightly. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed, not with a solution, but with a notification. Payment failed. Her eyebrows pulled together. That's not possible, she said sharply, as if the phone could hear her. She opened her banking app. The screen took longer than usual to load. Then it appeared. Account restricted. Her fingers froze. What nonsense is this? Her voice was no longer calm. She refreshed the screen. Same message. She tried another card. Same result. The house, once warm and secure, now felt unfamiliar. The silence pressed against her ears. Outside, the sounds of the street grew louder, almost mocking, laughter, engines, life moving forward without her permission. She paced the living room, tea forgotten on the counter, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Small problems, she told herself. Minor issues. Things that would be fixed with a few phone calls. But deep down, a thin thread of unease tightened in her chest. Something was wrong. And though she didn't know it yet, this was only the beginning. By late morning, the unease she had tried to ignore turned into something far worse. The house no longer felt quiet, it felt hostile. My stepmother stood at the dining table, phone pressed tightly to her ear, her voice sharp and impatient. "I already told you," she snapped, pacing back and forth, "there must be some mistake. Fix it." She stopped walking, listening, her face slowly draining of color. "Yes. I understand," she said stiffly. "But that's impossible." She ended the call and stared at the phone as if it had betrayed her. Outside, the sun climbed higher, heat pressing against the windows. The ceiling fan remained still, the air heavy and stale. Sweat beaded at her temples, but she barely noticed. Her attention was fixed on the buzzing phone in her hand, another call coming in, this time it was the bank. Her fingers trembled as she answered. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was calm, professional, unmoved by her rising panic. "Accounts under review. Access temporarily restricted. Further verification required." "What do you mean restricted?" She raised her voice. "I need access now." The call ended politely. Firmly. She rushed to her purse and pulled out her wallet, fingers fumbling as she slid a card from its slot. As if sheer will could change reality, she grabbed her keys and hurried outside to the nearby ATM. The street buzzed with life, vendors shouting, rickshaws honking, neighbors chatting under shaded balconies. She inserted the card, transaction declined. Her breath hitched. Again. Declined. People behind her shifted impatiently. Someone cleared their throat. Heat crawled up her neck as embarrassment burned her face. She yanked the card out and hurried back home, heels striking the pavement too fast, too loud. The phone rang again. Then again. Electricity department. Water services. Internet provider. Each call delivered the same message in different words: payments overdue, accounts inactive, services suspended. The comfort she had taken for granted unraveled piece by piece, like threads being pulled from expensive fabric. "No, listen to me," she shouted into the phone at one point, her composure completely gone. "I live here. This is my house." The words echoed through the empty rooms, hollow and unconvincing. She slammed the phone onto the table and sank into a chair, chest rising and falling rapidly. The ticking clock sounded louder now, each second pounding against her nerves. The walls she once walked through with pride now felt like they were closing in. This wasn't a coincidence. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a terrifying thought began to surface, one she had pushed away the night before. The person she had thrown out hadn't fought back. And now, everything she thought she controlled was slipping through her fingers. By the time the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the living room, panic had fully replaced confidence. And the truth, still hidden, was drawing closer. The truth didn't arrive loudly. It arrived calmly, cold, precise, and impossible to escape. My stepmother sat stiffly on the edge of the sofa, phone pressed to her ear, her foot tapping against the marble floor in restless rhythm. The afternoon light slanted through the curtains, dust floating in the air like tiny witnesses to what was about to happen. She had already made too many calls that day, but this one felt different. Permanent. "Yes, I'm listening," she said, forcing confidence into her voice. There was a pause. Then another. Her fingers tightened around the phone. "I don't understand," she said slowly. "Say that again." The voice on the other end remained professional, almost bored. "Ownership records. Legal documents. Registered accounts. The house. The utilities. The finances. All under one name. Not hers." Her face drained of color as if someone had pulled the ground out from under her. "That's not possible," she whispered. "My husband, this house." "I'm sorry, ma'am," the voice interrupted gently. "According to our records, the property is legally owned by," the name landed like a blow. She pulled the phone away from her ear and stared at it, her reflection faintly visible on the dark screen, eyes wide, lips parted, fear finally breaking through her carefully built authority. "No," she said aloud, shaking her head. "No, no, no." She stood abruptly, knocking the cushion aside, and began pacing the room. Her heels struck the floor sharply, each step frantic now. Memories rushed in, the night before, the way I had stood silently, the documents she never saw, the calm in my eyes when she told me to leave. Silence. That silence suddenly made sense. Her phone buzzed again, an email this time. She opened it with trembling hands. Attachments. Scanned papers. Legal confirmations. Dates. Signatures. Everything was there. The house she had claimed so confidently. The money she thought she controlled. The life she believed was secure. None of it was hers. Her chest tightened, breath coming fast and shallow. She sank into a chair, gripping the armrest as if it might steady her. Outside, the city carried on, horns blaring, children laughing, a distant call to prayer drifting through the air, unaware that her world was collapsing inside those walls. Regret crept in next, sharp and merciless. She saw my face again, remembered her words, "This is not your house." The cruelty. The certainty. Her hands began to shake. Without hesitation, she scrolled through her contacts and pressed my name. The phone rang. Once. Twice. No answer. Panic settled deep in her chest, heavier than anything she had felt before. For the first time since she had walked into that house with power in her voice, she understood the truth completely. She hadn't thrown out a powerless person. She had thrown out the owner, and now, she needed me more than she ever had. The phone lay face up on the table, vibrating softly again and again, like a nervous heartbeat that refused to calm down. My stepmother hovered over it, her earlier confidence completely gone. Each ring felt louder than the last, echoing through the house she no longer felt in control of. Call again, she snapped, her voice cracking. Maybe they didn't hear it. My father stood near the window, his shoulders slumped, the afternoon light outlining the worry etched deep into his face. This was the first time I had seen him look truly afraid. He cleared his throat and took the phone from her trembling hands. He dialed my number once. Twice. Straight to voicemail. He swallowed hard. Please, he muttered under his breath, as if speaking to the phone itself. Then, louder, it's me. Call me back. No response. My stepmother grabbed the phone again and began typing furiously, her fingers stumbling over the screen. We need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. Come home. Let's fix this. She sent one message, then another, apologies layered over excuses, softened words replacing last night's cruelty. Her pride dissolved with every unsent reply. This isn't happening, she whispered, pacing the room. They can't just disappear. But I had, miles away, the phone buzzed in my bag as I sat quietly, listening to the distant sounds of the city, traffic humming, teacups clinking in a roadside stall, voices blending into background noise. I didn't reach for it. I already knew who it was. Back at the house, the silence grew unbearable. My father tried again, his voice softer now, stripped of authority. I should have spoken up, he said into the voicemail, regret heavy in every word. Please, just talk to us. The irony hung thick in the air. The same people who had watched me walk out without a word were now begging for my voice. The same door that had closed behind me was now a barrier they couldn't open. My stepmother sank onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. Fix this, she hissed at my father. You have to fix this. He had no answer. Outside, the sky began to darken, evening creeping in slowly. Lights flickered on in neighboring houses where people still felt safe, still felt welcome. Inside this one, desperation filled every corner. The phone rang again. And again each unanswered call shifted the balance further, confirming what they were only beginning to understand. The power had changed hands. And for the first time, they were the ones left waiting, helpless, unheard, and facing the consequences of the silence they had created. The knock on the door was tentative, almost pleading. I didn't move at first, just standing on the porch, letting the cool evening air brush against my face. The sky had turned a deep indigo, and the first stars were starting to pierce the darkness above. Streetlights flickered softly along the quiet lane, highlighting the shadows of trees swaying gently in the breeze. And there they were, my stepmother and father, standing awkwardly on the walkway, faces pale and strained, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and desperation. They looked smaller somehow, diminished by the realization that the power they once wielded over me had slipped through their fingers. "Please, just listen," my stepmother called out, her voice trembling. We didn't mean," her words broke into a sob, and she covered her mouth with both hands. My father shifted uneasily beside her, clearing his throat. We need to explain. Please." His voice lacked the authority it had carried so arrogantly before. Now it was raw, pleading, almost hollow. I stepped forward slowly, gripping the strap of my bag. The air smelled faintly of the city, hot asphalt, exhaust, and the faint aroma of evening street food drifting from a corner stall. I could hear faint laughter from neighbors, the distant call of a muezzin, life going on as if nothing had changed. "You threw me out," I said softly, my voice steady but heavy with everything left unspoken. "You didn't see me. You didn't hear me. You thought you had the right to erase me from my own life." My stepmother's shoulders sagged, and her lips quivered. We were wrong," she whispered. I didn't understand." "You didn't understand?" I asked, letting the words hang in the air. "You called this house yours. You tried to take everything from me, my home, my money, my life, and you thought I would just walk away quietly?" My father opened his mouth, but no words came. He looked at the ground, shame etched deep into his face. The tension hung between us, heavy and unbroken. I took a step closer to the door, then paused, letting them feel the weight of my silence. Every beat of the evening seemed louder now, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant hum of traffic, the faint barking of a dog in the neighborhood. Finally, I spoke. "I didn't need to fight last night. I didn't need to yell or beg. The truth always comes out. And it has." They exchanged glances, fear and regret mirrored in each other's eyes. My stepmother's hands trembled, my father's jaw tightened. I didn't step inside. I didn't offer forgiveness. I simply stood there, calm, controlled, letting them absorb the reality they had ignored for too long. For the first time, the house felt like mine again, not because of walls or furniture, but because I was the one holding the power now. And they finally understood, the game was over. The evening settled into a quiet calm, the kind that carries both weight and clarity. I stood on the porch for a moment longer, letting the cool night air wash over me. The city around me had its usual hum, distant car horns, the faint chatter of neighbors, and the soft rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze, but inside, a sense of justice finally settled. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. In control. Whole. I stepped inside, my hand brushing the doorknob with deliberate care. The house smelled faintly of tea and polished wood, familiar and grounding. Every corner reflected my choices, the color of the walls, the furniture, the photographs. This was my space, my life, my effort, and it had always belonged to me. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to lash out. Power doesn't require noise. It doesn't demand humiliation. All it asks is recognition, and finally, they would have to see the truth. Karma, as it turns out, doesn't need my hand to act. It only waits for patience and the right moment. And I had let it do its work. The house remained silent as I walked through the rooms, memories of the past mingling with a new sense of purpose. I had learned something important: boundaries are more powerful than anger. Respect is more binding than fear. And those who fail to honor both will eventually face the consequences of their choices. I could still hear them outside, their whispers and apologies floating faintly in the night air, carried by the wind like confessions I didn't need to hear. My stepmother's voice quivered. "Please, can we talk?" My father's tone was quieter now, almost defeated. But I didn't answer. Not yet. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because some lessons must be felt, not explained. I paused in the living room, gazing out the window at the street below. The moon hung low, casting a silver glow across the quiet city. Somewhere a stray dog barked, the sound echoing softly against the walls, a reminder that life moves forward, even after storms. I finally whispered to myself, calm and resolute, respect is earned. Control is claimed. And actions always have consequences. I didn't need to celebrate. The lesson had been delivered. Silence carried more weight than anger ever could, and the house, my house, stood as proof. That night, I felt a quiet satisfaction, the kind that comes from knowing you walked away when it mattered, yet returned when justice called. Karma had done its work. And I had reclaimed my life, not through revenge, but through patience, clarity, and quiet strength. Because some truths, once revealed, can never be undone.